Seeing as how there's always a fierce debate of whether to start a World Showcase journey with Mexico or Canada, and the fact that people who side with Mexico typically shout or text the loudest, I figured the DisFair's World Showcase episode should start here. I mean, I know there's Epcot's rear entrance that forces guests to choose between France and England, but that's more of a caveat. And it's sort of ironic that people find any debate between the Mexico or Canada pavilions, because these two countries were purposely selected to flank all of Epcot's World Showcase as a harmonious gesture toward the US's neighbors to the north and south. Anyways, the Mexico Pavilion is also a place that's very special to me because of someone extremely close to me. So here we go, the DisFair's Epcot's World Showcase Mexico Pavilion episode. Wow, is that a lot of words to define a location. Alright, so Mexico was part of the original World Showcase, opening along with Epcot on October 1st, 1982. It was first revealed in publicly released plans that Mexico would be a pavilion in 1975. Initially heading the project was X Atencio, an amazing artist and Imagineer who had a huge hand in Pirates of the Caribbean as well as the Haunted Mansion, and by this point held enormous respect with the Imagineering department. The concept artist was Tom Gillian, who'd been hired to bring the designs for the Epcot Center project to light. Now, Disney made significant efforts with the Mexican government to gain their direct participation in the hopes of attaining authenticity, rather than a Disneyfied interpretation of Mexico. The attempt went as high as personally presenting plans to Mexico's president and his family in the Mexican presidential residence of Los Pinos. And though I couldn't unearth a source which said Disney received a direct no to these designs, or even what they may have looked like, I do know that after Disney invited Mexican exchange students and the ambassador to the United States, that their comments were rather critical, suggesting Disney required more direct experience with Mexico. According to some reports, the original conceptualization ran ahead with a Spanish colonial theme, and supposedly the place had too many piñatas, if that paints a proper picture. This resulted in X Atencio himself to decide it might be wise to actually, seek out a Mexican artist. Not so crazy, right? So X comes upon Eddie Martinez, a Mexican Los Angeles artist who had been working for Disney since 1970 when he began work as a muralist on the Hall of Presidents. So in 1976, X brought Eddie in to develop the early concepts for the ride-through attraction for the pavilion, showcasing Mexico's history and culture. After Eddie's amazing take on the ride-through project was approved in 1979, Eddie was made production manager of the whole Mexico Pavilion. He didn't stop there, though. Eddie hired Mexican Americans, literally seeking out as many people with connections to Mexico as he could to make the attraction as authentic as possible, particularly placing them as heads of different departments. The choreographers, the layout artists, costumers. There was a plethora of Mexican Americans in the Mexico Pavilion's involvement.
A plethora? Oh, yes. You have a plethora.
Now, authentic is a subjective term, but it was roundly agreed that Eddie Martinez, along with his team, properly evoked Mexico's culture and flair. Eddie had actually gone to Mexico earlier on in the 1970s, visiting small villages, colonial pueblos, major cities, ancient archaeological sites, and historical museums, just for the benefit of the cultural awareness for his artwork. In fact, it was even rumored that Epcot Center's Mexico Pavilion came to life in the barrio of Los Angeles, that beyond view there were offices and workrooms of sculptors, painters, and modelers creating the Mexico Pavilion. Though it's also said that this was only partly true concerning the costumes and choreographer, Florencio Yescas and his Esplendor Azteca dancers, and that the majority of work was being done at Disney facilities northwest of Glendale. Either way, Eddie was the perfect person to spearhead the pavilion. Eddie even brought in John Pohl, an archaeology PhD from UCLA, as an expert on pre-Columbian writing systems regarding Aztec and Mayan art to advise on the project. No other pavilion went anywhere near these extensive cultural lengths, by the way, but the result was an undeniably fantastic blend of imagination, engineering, and architecture, lending it a sort of touristic authenticity that doesn't offend the source or confuse visitors from different cultures. And this is as good a time as any to insert that Joe Rohde, the eventual lead designer of Disney's Animal Kingdom, actually got his start with Disney working on the Mexico Pavilion as a model designer and scenic painter in 1980.
Your Majesty certainly has a way with dumb animals.
You may have looked at Mexico's pyramid and thought it was pretty cool, but it's more than that. It's actually fascinating. Some sources like to say it's modeled after an Aztec temple of Quetzalcoatl at Teotihuacan. Probably because it makes them feel smart to use so many big foreign words, as well as the very obvious feathered serpent reliefs, which are all of Quetzalcoatl, by the way, the Aztec creator of man, but it's only partly true. The pyramid is actually a hodgepodge of influences, including that of the Toltec culture, which were the people who flourished in Mexico before the Aztecs. The primary influence, however, is El Castillo, the temple of Kukulkan, a Mayan pyramid in the center of Chichen Itza dating between 800 to 1100 AD in the Yucatan. But like I said, there are other pre-Columbian, meaning before Columbus, influences too, and Disney took the artistic liberty of making it colorful. I mean, archaeologists know it was painted during its era, but as to how is anyone's guess.
How now, brown cow?
Each side has 91 steps as well as an additional step at the top for a total of 365. Huh? Mayans and numbers and calendars. As tempting as it may be to try to climb the stairs, there's a sign that clearly states not to do so. Disney will absolutely arrest you for making the attempt. However, that hasn't stopped inebriated individuals from trying it anyway. But it's short-sighted. You could land on a child, break your own neck. The list of reasons not to do it is taller than the pyramid itself. And you may find it surprising to learn, because I was, that the nightly Harmonious and Illuminations fireworks shows were actually controlled from a small office set at the top of the pyramid. I'm not certain if the current Luminous The Symphony of Us show operates out of it, so I don't want to put out false information, but I assume it does. The office up there is hardly visible, but it's there. And, of course, I couldn't find any images of the place. I really tried to find something, anything, but I got nada. And if you're looking at all of the steps leading inside and wondering how you're going to get your wheelchair or stroller up there, you don't have to worry. There's a winding path to the right of the temple through a scenic Yucatan jungle, free of venomous snakes. The relief out front depicts Montezuma's first encounter with Europeans. You can tell they're Europeans because of their blue eyes, as the Aztec emperor mistakes them for gods. While on the side of the pyramid are the four faces of Tlaloc, the god of rain and earthly fertility, chief deity of the Aztec. Now, as fantastic as the exterior is, what's inside is just as amazing. All entrances lead you into a gallery that changes and is altered so often that I don't want to date myself by saying what's there at this exact moment. But it's always neat, embraces something to do with Mexican history and culture, and yet is just a taste of what lies deeper within. Beyond the gallery is the immersive plaza, with a twilight setting implemented with many of the designs used in Pirates of the Caribbean. I can still remember my mind being blown as a kid by suddenly being somewhere cool under a night canopy sky while a sunny 90-something degree day blazed outside. And if you've ever wondered why Disney chose to design this place to be perpetually night, it's because in Mexico, the night is a time for friends and family to gather in local plazas to socialize, or so I'm told. The Plaza de los Amigos was greatly inspired by the very real location of Taxco, a historical and scenic mining town in the state of Guerrero. The Plaza de los Amigos has all sorts of fun stuff for sale from stall and cart vendors in the open marketplace, all perfectly themed and exuding a tranquil setting even when the place is bustling with activity. From the fountain to the warm glow of the lanterns, the architecture, it's all amazing. The style, as I mentioned earlier, is called Spanish Colonial, if you're into architecture. Along with tons of astounding little details that give the impression you're ensconced by comfortable lived-in homes with windows and balconies overlooking the plaza. And it uses one of Walt Disney's tactics for immersion. He knew that when people step down into a new, properly themed environment, that the human mind somehow feels pleasantly transported. This works with shops, restaurants, plazas, whatever the situation may be. However, a place also needs to be functional for wheelchairs and strollers, so it can get tricky. But the Plaza de los Amigos in the Mexico Pavilion nailed it by having two curved ramps funneling people in and out at their leisure. It really does feel like a separate world from the rest of Epcot. The vendor items are advertised as authentic, and I believe it. The stuff changes fairly often enough, and even if I don't intend to buy anything, I'm always compelled to check things out to see what's new. And I know it's fairly common knowledge, but not everybody knows that all of the cast members in each pavilion are actually from the respected country you're in. It's so neat, I feel like it's just taken for granted now. I remember working on a project on France and having a question that the internet was just of no use to me. So I went to Epcot and asked one of the French cast members and got my answer. Seriously, all of the cast members from every country are eager to discuss and answer questions about their home. It's great.
We were voyagers! We were voyagers! We were voyagers!
La Cava del Tequila is the pavilion's cantina, inspired by the cellars of Mexican haciendas. I'm not really one for drinking, but the place is really neat looking and has astounding decor, what with its terracotta hues and soft lighting. Really though, after walking in from the Twilight Plaza, it's even harder to recall you're even in Florida. There's also artwork here and there that was inspired by Mexico's history of tequila making. And it can get pretty crowded because there's only like 30 seats, but it's worth the wait and the crowd situation actually improves the experience. It's hard to imagine the place being empty. But I'm a Star Wars fan, so I guess I have a soft spot for cantinas.
Credits will do fine.
And they have authentic Mexican tequila, as well as drinks ranging to quite a large number of credits. And that's not even talking about the flights. Disney's website boasts they have over 200 tequilas here. However, I've also heard there's more like 70, and that's a pretty big margin of error, so I can't say with any accurate estimation as to how many they have at any given moment. The La Cava Negroni is sort of a fan favorite. It comes with a jalapeno frozen inside of an ice cube. They also have what's called the Agave Experience, which debuted in 2021. It's 45 minutes with a tequila ambassador versed in agave spirits. It's for a minimum of 4 guests with a max of 6. La Tienda Encantada currently offers casual Mexican clothing and jewelry for women and children, and though I always think this store leads to somewhere, it doesn't. However, La Princesa de Cristal has no disappointments. It's one of the many Arribas Brothers glass shops throughout Disney World. Inside are all kinds of glass works, cut crystal, blown glass, and figurines. There's often someone working on glass here too, and it's really fascinating to watch them work. I worked as a glass artist for nearly a decade and always used to find myself coming here and daydreaming about joining their ranks.
Go, live your dream.
Despite all of this awesomeness, the back of the plaza is nevertheless home of 2 of the greatest features of the Mexico Pavilion, the Gran Fiesta attraction, which I'll get to in just a moment, and the San Angel Inn, which is a restaurant actually set alongside the scenic waters of the Gran Fiesta attraction. There's also the pyramid and smoking volcano, if you're not thoroughly impressed yet. The visual of having a meal along a river with a Mayan pyramid on the Yucatan Peninsula under a starry sky was an image heavily promoted by the real town of Taxco during the 4 decades leading up to Epcot's Mexico Pavilion. Now, the San Angel Inn is also a real place in Mexico, the structure dating back to the late 1600s as an old Carmelite monastery. These monks also established a school, naming it San Angel. 100 years or so later, it became a hacienda for numerous politicians and well-to-do individuals, including Angel Calderón de la Barca y Belgrano, who was a Spanish minister for several years to the United States. However, the Angel part of his name has nothing to do with the title of San Angel. Like I said, it was named by the monks over a century earlier. So yeah, the entire setup with an attractions boat gently gliding past a restaurant is sort of a scenic twin to the Pirates of the Caribbean and Blue Bayou restaurant in Disneyland. It's like this portion of the Mexico Pavilion is an amalgam of so many great things. It's a Small World, Pirates of the Caribbean, the Blue Bayou, and Mexico, all combined as just a fraction of the pavilion. And last but not least, there's the Gran Fiesta Tour starring the 3 Caballeros. Formerly known from 1982 to 2007 as El Rio Del Tiempo, which translates to the River of Time, which in fact was the only ride at Epcot's World Showcase when it initially opened. Again, it's a gentle boat ride similar to It's a Small World, but featuring the 3 Caballeros, Donald, Jose, and Panchito. Suffice it to say that the ride is a sort of sampler through several regions of Mexico, such as Acapulco, Chichen Itza, Manzanillo, and ends in a fun finale with Mexico City. There's so many places to eat at the Mexico Pavilion that it's impossible to try out everything there in a single day, or even trip unless you were ravenously driven. There's the San Angel Inn that I already mentioned, but there's also the Hacienda de San Angel, which is on the water of the World Showcase Lagoon across from the Mesoamerican Pyramid. It's a fantastic spot for Epcot's Luminous show. Then there's the quick service Cantina de San Angel, which, by the way, the San Angel thing on all of these restaurants still mixes me up when I'm trying to set reservations or even just pre-plan a day. So there's the San Angel Inn, the Hacienda de San Angel, and like I just said, the quick service Cantina de San Angel, with its nice and easy menu selections, which is also a fun spot for eating outdoors and beside the World Showcase Lagoon. However, in spite of the San Angel Inn within the plaza, the repeated San Angel angle, as it were, isn't without cause. When the Mexico Pavilion first opened with Epcot, it was sponsored by Moctezuma Brewery and San Angel Inn, again, the real restaurant in Mexico. In fact, Mexico's restaurants are currently run by the Palmas Restaurant Group, which also runs the restaurants at Disney's Coronado Springs Resort outside of the Gran Destino Tower, and Frontera Cocina at Disney Springs. It even runs the festival stand in Mexico. I wish they would operate a place out of downtown Disney in California, because the Tortilla Jo's over there doesn't exactly hit the spot for me. But that's probably asking for too much from the Palmas Restaurant Group. And then there's the Choza de Margarita, where you buy margaritas. So yeah, there's a lot of food and drinks in the Mexico Pavilion. And that's with hardly mentioning the specialty food booth added during 4 of Epcot's festivals. There's the International Flower and Garden Festival, the International Festival of the Holidays, the International Food and Wine Festival, and the International Festival of the Arts. Did I mention these are international festivals?
You did, yeah.
Oh, and setting food aside, there's Donald Duck with a sombrero. This fun picture prospect is off to the right of the pyramid for kids and adults to interact with Mexico's favorite Annette today. Now, I absolutely have to mention Mariachi Cobre, the Mexico Pavilion's mariachi 12-piece band, and they are astounding. Really, these guys are beyond talented, and they're literally historic. If you find yourself with the ability and time, check them out on Spotify or even YouTube. The hours change, but they play most days at the Mexico Pavilion. Mariachi Cobre often play beside the Ring Carver shop, which is an awesome addition to the pavilion unto itself. It can be argued that the Mexico Pavilion may in a way be the best blend of artistic license throughout the World Showcase. The fact that it was contrived by Mexican Americans definitely yielded the pavilion one of the more successful outcomes. It was a surefire sign of the capital being won by Mexican Americans in the United States as a whole, particularly in the 1970s and 80s, lending an authenticity with an eye that's still pleasing to Americans. It's expertly executed, and it should be added that not one substantial noteworthy change has ever been made to Eddie Martinez's layout and design to the pavilion. It's one of the best of Epcot's pavilions and is a cornerstone to the World Showcase. Hopefully this episode helps you see it through a fresh lens. The history it has, even beyond Disney itself, makes it unique worldwide. Adios, and Diz Fairs out.